And I still to this day will look at that 6-point checklist of, does my copy have social proof? Does it create authority? Does it create likability and relatability? Does it, like, I go through the list and almost use that as sort of a personal checklist.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Road to Ad World with special guest Alex Cattoni. Alex, I'm going to do a brief introduction, but please do let me know if I missed anything. What I've read is that in 2008, you ditched law school. You moved to Malaysia to work with Mindvalley, the massive personal growth publisher, where you started as a marketing trainee, and then you grew to creative director. From there, you've launched several successful brands, an agency, communities, even events, the Copy Posse and Flight Club. And above all, you've honed your abilities in writing high converting sales copy, scaling multi-million dollar brands, and crafting iconic promotional campaigns. Anything I missed there? Anything you want to fill in?
I mean, that's a good breakdown. Yeah, I mean, seems crazy to hear you say 2008. Like, I've really been in this online marketing world for a long time. So I worked for Mindvalley for 3.5 years. That was an incredible experience. Obviously, it's what got me into this whole crazy online advertising world, and then started my business in 2011. And so it's been 9 years now that I've been consulting, doing copywriting for large personal development brands, and then last year launched the Copy Posse, which is my education platform. So training for copywriters and entrepreneurs, specifically around how to write copy, how to start a freelance copywriting business, or how to take your business to the next level with high converting copy.
Awesome. I'm going to jump into that in a bit. I want to first talk about Mindvalley because actually, would you want to just explain a little bit more about Mindvalley in case people don't know this massive publisher?
Yeah, absolutely. So Mindvalley is, I would say, very confidently the world's leading publisher of personal growth online. So they publish, a ton of incredible authors, speakers, coaches, anywhere from spirituality to like Wim Hof with more of the sort of, physical personal development, breath work, that sort of stuff, and kind of everything in between. And so when I first heard about Mindvalley, it was back in 2007. And back then they were a very, small startup. I don't know exactly what number of employee I was, but like it was maybe somewhere between 10 and 15. Let's say 12-ish. And it was a very, very small team. I applied, as you said, I ditched law school. I never quite got into law school, but it's because I stopped studying for the LSAT and ditched my application to law school. So just so everyone doesn't think I'm a lawyer. But that was part of the reason why I stopped when I did, is I have that type of personality where if I go into something, I want to be the best at it. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I go to law school now, like I could see my path roll out in front of me, and I didn't really like or feel excited about it. So I decided actually at the time to just put it on hold. So, whatever you tell yourself when you're 22 making a decision that your parents might not agree with, I was like, I'm just putting this on hold and I'm going to go work for this startup in Malaysia. And I remember my folks being like, what? Where is Malaysia? And I had to find it on the map and be like, right there, right below Thailand. And that experience was like a crash course in online marketing. I mean, in the first year alone, I started off doing customer service. Then I was writing PPC ads. And then I was managing the Google AdWords account. And then I was project managing. And then I was business managing. And, it's just been it was just this journey of, dipping my toes into every sort of element of online marketing, because back then the team was super agile and small, and we all kind of did what we had to do to make it work. And that was, I think, very, very exciting. And anyone who's listening, and I'm sure many of the speakers at AdWorld too, can relate to that startup environment. Like you never work harder in your life, but it's so much fun, and we all felt like a family. And that was my foray into not only internet marketing but also personal development. So I mean, imagine being a college kid And really all I ever really cared about was my friends and, getting good grades, of course, because I wanted to be a lawyer. But diving into this company that was like drinking the Kool-Aid of online marketing, personal development all together, wrapped into one on the other side of the world. I mean, it was quite the experience.
Yeah, and so you grew into creative director. So was that just more marketing director? Because it sounded like you just jumped around to all the different roles within the marketing department.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So yeah, I believe their term for creative director even now has probably changed from when I was there. I would say the first year I was there was very much kind of jumping around from different roles, and then the last 2 years was squarely focused on the marketing and product launch side. So.
Right.
Basically being given a business, like a business baby, and being like, here, you're in charge of managing all of the promotions, the marketing campaigns. We had in-house copywriters, so I was never an official copywriter at Mindvalley, but that's definitely where I learned the trade, because I would, if the copywriter was busy, I would take a stab at writing a landing page. And then ultimately creative director as the role that I held it at the time was sort of to oversee every single launch and product within the organization from a marketing standpoint, which did involve, sales pages and some of the more design elements of it, but definitely the marketing side.
So what made you gravitate towards copywriting if you were exposed to all those different aspects of the business? I mean, obviously you took some part of the community building because we know what happens later down the road, but what was it that drew you to copywriting?
I always loved it, and I never felt confident calling myself a copywriter. And I think it's because, in the beginning, obviously, and I think this was because I know so many incredible copywriters. Like, I'd be at an event and like having a drink with John Carlton or Chris Donato, like all of these incredible copywriters, and I was like this little 23-year-old that was like, oh my God, I'll never be as good as them. And so I wasn't confident in calling myself a copywriter, but I enjoyed it so much. And then when I started my company in 2011, what I did was consulting. And so I started working with personal development brands and different businesses on marketing consulting, because that's really where I felt confident in, designing funnels and campaigns. And naturally, clients would start asking me, oh, well, do you write copy too? And I'd be like, well, not really, but I could take a stab at it. And then it was just a progression into, oh, wait, maybe I can do this. And, oh, my copy's converting. Oh, this is crazy. And then I obviously started feeling a little bit more confident about calling myself a copywriter. And that was 10 years ago. So there's been obviously a ton of growth and evolution in that role. And I just continue to enjoy it, because to me, copywriting isn't just putting words on a page. Anyone in online marketing knows that. It's so much more about marketing and psychology than it is about anything else. Like, the writing the words is the easy part. It's coming up with the hooks and weaving empathy and emotion and storytelling into your work. So for me, as someone who's naturally quite creative, but also pretty analytical, I love the way that it merges kind of both sides of my brain in that way. I can be strategic, but I can still use the creative side of my brain in a way that is extremely fulfilling for me.
How do you go about like on the psychology side of things when you're working with a new brand? It sounds like you gravitate towards personal growth, but I'm pretty sure that you do dabble elsewhere. How do you get into the mind of the persona of their consumer, like of their customers? Like, what's the strategy that you put in place to deliver on that voice or come up with it from scratch?
Yeah, it's tricky. It's easier if the brand already has an existing brand voice or a personality. So personality-based business, the first thing I do is, read, watch, consume their content as if I was the consumer. Obviously, a big element of that is looking at the data as well. So, so many of the brands that I work with have pretty good insights into who their audience is. And there's not a lot of guesswork in that anymore. When you're starting out and you're like, I don't know who my customer is. I'm lucky in the sense that most of the clients that I have are all pre-established businesses and they have a very clear idea of who their audience is. So it's kind of a mix of looking at the data, knowing who they are demographically, knowing how the brand typically communicates, and obviously that's a pretty good indicator of the type of client they've attracted thus far. I also really love to, if my clients haven't ran any sort of surveys or done any sort of questionnaires or anything like that to their audience in a while, I truly believe that's the easiest way to get that information and to be able to keep those surveys open-ended. I actually learned this from Ryan Levesque, who spoke at my mastermind, is he said, when you're doing customer surveys, don't have it be multiple choice where you're telling them what the answer is and they're just picking. Leave it open-ended. Let them tell you in their own language what it is that keeps them up at night, or what it is that they struggle with every day, or what their biggest challenge is. And so, if I had to ask only 2 questions to an audience, it would be, what's the number one thing you're struggling with right now? And what topics are you most interested in learning about? Because for me, that's a very clear, like, here's the pain, here's the solution. How do you merge those 2 together to create a compelling offer? And so that's, I'm just a really big believer in people will tell you what they need, and then you just have to deliver on it, which makes it sound so simple, but it really is that simple in a lot of ways.
I think you do have some good methods that do simplify it, like ABC. I know that you've kind of dialed in as well. When you talk about the language, though, and getting that, extracting it from the open-ended answers, what about research into different Facebook communities or like Reddit forums? And because I've heard more and more people, it's just like you need to read exactly what they're saying and then inject that type of language into the copy. Do you have any like research methods, or is it mainly survey-based?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think because I'm so embedded in the personal development world, either through personal interest or friends who have businesses in personal development with the clients that I've worked with for years, I think I probably do that intuitively without having a super clear process. But if I were to reverse engineer it, I think it really is understanding where your audience hangs out, and then be a bit of a lurker, like really figure out what is it that these people are struggling with. And so I'm in like a bazillion personal development Facebook groups, and so I think that's an added advantage, as well as if you're a copywriter writing in a niche that you're genuinely interested in, not only because you're going to have more fun writing copy on a topic that actually excites you, but that you're going to have just one, like you're going to be that much closer to the target audience of who you're communicating to. And I often say, sometimes the best copy is written by someone who's talking to like a past version of themselves. It's themselves before they found the solution. And, and so I do think it can be a struggle for someone who has, really not a lot of experience in any sort of niche to go in and write copy for it. With that being said, it's entirely possible, figure out where those people are hanging out. Reddit is, I love Reddit personally. I don't think it's necessarily where a lot of the audience that I typically write to hangs out, but that's just because a lot of the businesses I write for, their demographic is like older women. And so I don't know a lot of like moms hanging out on Reddit, but
probably not.
Times are changing. You never know.
Facebook communities though, definitely. Looking back on like your methodology, like I think for most people, and myself included in my team, like we like to stick to the AIDA principle: attention, interest, desire, and action. For you, ABC is a go-to method. I think I've read. Do you want to explain a little bit about that? Because you've really drilled it down quite simply.
Oh, my ABC formula for what copywriting is. Yeah, I mean, that's like my super, super simple. It's like audience, benefit, call to action. And so that to me is, when people ask, what is it? That's typically how I describe it. There's so many incredible formulas. One of my friends, Dean Graziosi, said this at the last Flight Club Mastermind that he spoke at, and I thought it was so brilliant. And, his 3-step formula is hook, offer, close. And of course, there's so much that goes into that. And I think, the AIDA everyone wants a framework, right? Everyone's like, give me a framework. And one thing I've learned from growing a community is like, okay, how do I take what I know and simplify it so that it's teachable? And I think that's the starting point for people, it's quite I would say one of the obstacles that held me back from starting my community for a long time was that I knew I wanted to teach copywriting, but I really struggled with taking something that was so creative and putting it into a formula. And I know of all of the different frameworks and formulas out there, but to try to simplify it in a way that is, understandable to the average person who can then adapt it and then go from there. Because of course, you need to know the audience. You need to, and get attention. Sorry, you need to have a benefit. You need to have a call to action, but that's not going to give you the answer to running a sales page. But so much of it goes back to that really, really foundational stuff, which is why I also love the AIDA formula. And so many people, I say this a lot, is a lot of people try to sell to people assuming there's already a desire there. And so I actually have, what's funny is I have this, I'm a big fan of Eugene Schwartz's 5 levels of customer awareness. So I actually drew it on my iPad. I don't know if you can see that.
Ooh.
But I can send this graphic to you if you want it. But
Please do.
It basically talks about the 5 levels of customer awareness in that your copywriting direction and how direct versus indirect you are is directly related to their level of awareness. So you could easily put AIDA on this and go, okay, if someone doesn't know who you are, there's absolutely no awareness. You're speaking to a very unaware audience. And so you need to do a lot of education, story, indoctrination. Like, you have to explain to people who you are, why they should listen to you, how you can understand what they're going through. It's a lot of copy. It's on an unaware audience, it's half the sales page, a long ass sales page. And then product aware, it's like, okay, they're aware, problem aware, meaning they know that they have a problem, but they don't really know you exist. So you still have to do a lot of getting attention, building up the pain, offering the solution, and so on. And so that to me is so clear. It's like the biggest mistake people make in their copy is they go right to the product, which is essentially like saying, I'm assuming you already want this, so here, go buy it now. And they're not doing any of the necessary indoctrination to get someone aware and interested in order to desire the product. So
absolutely,
all these frameworks are brilliant. You pick one, they'll all work.
We've had a speaker at one of our Amazon events talk about building communities, and he kind of stuck to that framework as well, as like building out the audience so well that by the end of it, they're asking you for the product. So you really need to warm them up, understand that help them understand that they need the product throughout the sales funnel, so that by the end of it, they're asking, where's the buy button? So you just need to handhold them throughout the whole thing. And as he mentioned too, the copy changes from extremely long form to just quite short snippets by the end of it. So yeah, the framework definitely works. I'll have to grab that for you, and then we'll add it to the video afterwards. We'll have the
okay, awesome, perfect. Yeah, it was probably hard to see.
So one thing I did want to chat with you about was the Copy Posse and how you built out this community, because although you'll be speaking on copywriting at AdWorld, building communities is something that gets brought up more and more, whether you're trying to own the audience or just cultivate something that you can potentially leverage down the road. For you, and you said that there was some hardships of figuring out how to get into it based off of simplifying creative process to get the Copy Posse going. But what were your first steps on growing it, or even getting it set up, and how did you cultivate it out the gate? Like, for some people interested in starting a community, what could you advise them?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because I think what happens, and this happens in like any different avenue, right? Where people go, I want to create a community, and they kind of reverse engineer it, and they think of just like the logistics. Like, okay, so I'm going to produce a YouTube video every week, for a year, and then I'm going to have this incredible community. And yeah, that's definitely part of it. But, in my opinion, if you're really excited about creating community, there has to be something that rallies people together. Gone are the days of, just wanting to post pretty photos on Instagram and build a community. I mean, you can do that, but most of the really successful Instagram influencers are rallying around a cause, whether it be sustainability or, feeling good in your own skin, or whatever that looks like. And so I think a lot of people make the mistake of trying to mimic the actions, and then they don't understand why they're not having success building a community. And for me, it had been in the back of my mind for a long time, because a lot of my, incredibly amazing friends were like, why aren't you the face of any business? Like, I had this consulting business behind the scenes, I was loving that, because at the time, one of my core values was freedom. So I was spending months every year in Italy and Morocco and Russia and Spain and France, and just writing on my laptop. And I would have a few client calls a week. And then the rest of the time, it was like I could write whenever I wanted and talk about the dream life. But it was about last year that I felt my value starting to shift, where it was like, okay, I still value freedom, of course, but like I have a message, and it's that copy can convert without being freaking douchey. And that to me was, as an art form that I've done for now, over a decade, or 9 years in my own business, I really was not enjoying how copywriting was getting a bad rap in the minds of a lot of like the average businesses. Like in direct response marketing, everyone knows copywriting is important, but then you talk to a lot of like coaches and people who could probably really benefit from a copywriter, or anyone in like a brick and mortar business, or anyone who had a service-based business or an education-based business, and they hear copywriting and they're like, ooh, like it's just like, saying douchey things to get people to take out their credit card and buy. And so for me, my mission of what I wanted to rally people behind was that you can be an authentic communicator, you can connect, and you can convert, and there's ways to do it, and here's how. And also kind of, call out a lot of the practices out there that I just don't vibe with. And I felt that women, which is ironic because I know so many freaking amazing female copywriters. I have to turn off my Slack. I know so many freaking amazing female copywriters. And when I went to YouTube and typed in copywriting, I was seeing none of, like there was some other channels that were a bit smaller and lower down, but I'm like, no woman is like really dominating this space. And so it was like a little bit of like a personal challenge, and I'm a little bit competitive, and I'm like, I'm going to do this, but mixed with, that gave me the determination. I mean, that gave me the determination to create a video every single week for over a year and a half. It took me 6 months to get 1,000 subscribers because of how the copywriting, how niche the copywriting, or how small the copywriting niche is, and I've had so many people say to me, if you just started talking about like social media marketing and online marketing in general, you'd get a lot more subscribers. And I'm like, I know. And I still do that a little bit, but it's not a part of what my core mission is. And so I'll still talk about those topics, but like, if you're building a community, like what are you there to say? And then say it every single time. Don't stray from that.
So keep your rallying point in mind across everything that you do with that community. So it's consistent, and obviously it provides, kind of your own niche aspect when it cuts through all the noise out there. You talk about finding only, if you put in copywriters in YouTube and it's just men. The digital marketing industry across the board is, it sways on the male side. It's getting a lot better, and I think events like AdWorld and say traffic conversion, there's a lot of onus on us to help do what we can there. And there are so many amazing marketers out there that are female. It's just, we're just trying to find them where they are. Like I remember, I think I saw you first through Gabe's podcast. Another
Vancouver,
another Vancouverite.
Right.
But I know there's just sometimes they're just hidden behind the curtain, and they're just doing amazing things without being shown. And then here you are making a change in that for the better of the community, definitely. On the side of rallying around a purpose, once you have that dialed in, what was your steps to then growing it? Was it just organic? Like, did you have to get on more podcasts maybe, or how did you get your name out there to build the community from zero to, I'm not sure where it's at just yet.
About 50,000 on YouTube. Yeah, I think, what's interesting is I would like to say that I was like super strategic, and to be honest, I probably could have done it a lot faster. My first goal with creating the content was really like, I just want to get this content out there. And it was sort of a personal challenge to me to put myself out there, because I think I think a lot of women can relate to this, and probably why, event organizers like yourself, and you mentioned traffic and conversion, Ryan, Roland, and Perry, why they have a hard time finding a lot of women entrepreneurs. It's not that they're not out there. I just find that a lot of the really successful female entrepreneurs I know are like very much showing up in their communities, and they're not like out there kind of waving their flag and calling themselves like the best entrepreneurs in the world. And I think it's because women really suffer with imposter syndrome, more than men. And I bet you there's stats that actually prove this, but, that's something that I really struggled with. Like I told you how I had a hard time calling myself a copywriter because I was comparing myself to like Gary Halbert.
Right.
And then I realized like, okay, is it going to take a year, 10 years? Like how long is it going to take for me to own this?
Mm-hmm.
And that was part of me starting my YouTube channel was like, fuck it, I'm just going to own it now and see what happens. I wasn't strategic at all. I never paid for any ads or any sort of online advertising. It was all fully organic. And then, eventually I think the right people just sort of found it. And I mean, even now, like, I'm sure that if I was a bit more strategic about it, I could have grown a lot faster. But, I listened to what the community wanted and then created content on that. And that was pretty much it. But what I will say though is that the organic route isn't necessarily a bad thing, and going niche isn't necessarily a bad thing, because I could have probably 100,000 or more subscribers by now if I went on a broader topic. But what happens is people then see you as an expert, but you're not like the one person that they would absolutely 100% go to if they wanted a copywriting course, for example.
Right.
And so, I've been able to do 2 launches this past year just to my, basically to my list that I grew as a result of my YouTube channel that were, from a metric standpoint, crazy successful. And my audience is relatively small compared to some of the big online brands out there. And so, I think it's really consistency and adding value. And that's specifically how YouTube rewards you. It's like, if you're consistent, if you're creating content that people engage with and, they keep coming back for more, then YouTube loves that. Every platform is different.
Yeah. No, I mean, you've created a community based off the fact that it is a lead generator in a sense. Like, you want people to be able to understand that you are the expert with copywriting and specialize in professional or personal growth. So that's where it pays forward, whereas it dilutes it if you go too big. And I think that's what a lot of people are realizing, especially if they're building communities for products down the road. They want to be extremely focused and niched out so that they'll be eventually just buy. For us, and I know we're cutting a little short here, I do want to just like give the audience kind of a little taste of what's to come. And I know we've bounced around a little bit, but for those that are just getting started and sharpening their knives with copywriting, outside of the AIDA, is there anything else you can give them for methods to look into that are just like go-tos of yours, or those methods that you just get your community started on just out the gate?
Yeah, I mean, there's certain frameworks that I just follow all the time. I mentioned Eugene Schwartz's customer awareness. He also has market sophistication level. So I would highly recommend getting a copy of Breakthrough Advertising if you can find it. Okay. It's a hard book to find. Okay. Robert Cialdini's book Influence I think that was probably the first book that I read on marketing and psychology. And I still to this day will look at that 6-point checklist of, does my copy have social proof? Does it create authority? Does it create likability and relatability? I go through the list and almost use that as sort of a personal checklist.
Okay.
I mean, I have so many book recommendations, but I think those 2 would be like, read those first.
Yeah.
And then, I think just start writing. A lot of people come to me and they're like, how do I start? I'm like, you just do. Like, there's you're not going to sit down and write a perfect sales page the first time you do it. One of my favorite things to say is, you want to know how to write good copy, first write bad copy and then fix it. Like, you have to start somewhere. And I look back at copy that I wrote 5 years ago, 5 years into my copywriting career, and I still am like, oh my gosh, like, that could have been so much better. What was I thinking? And so it's just an evolution, it's not this like, it's not like, conversion rate optimization where you're like, I absolutely know that red button is going to convert better than this green button or whatever, it's so much, it's so subjective that all you can really do is just start and then keep getting better.
Absolutely. Step out of your comfort zone, take that first step, and the second's always easier. Thank you so much, Alex. This has been good just to get to know you and get the community excited to see you at AdWorld. We'll be announcing the topic shortly. Thank you again. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Chad. This was fun, and I look forward to AdWorld. It'll be so much fun.
Awesome. Thank you.
See ya.